In a dusty town on the edge of a refugee zone, where jobs are scarce and power goes unchecked, a blind woman walks into an interview hoping for opportunity. What she gets instead is a proposition no job-seeking woman should ever receive. But this isn't a story of defeat. It's a story of defiance, of how one blind woman turned exploitation into accountability. Stay with us, because what this blind woman did will leave you speechless. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Wisdom for Inclusion, a channel where advocacy takes center stage. Here, we champion participation, inclusion, non-discrimination, and the equalization of opportunities for all. I hope you enjoy this amazing piece. In a bustling refugee-hosting district of an East African country, where systemic corruption simmered beneath the surface, and persons with disabilities faced near insurmountable barriers to employment, white-collar jobs often seemed like distant fantasies. For many, the idea of holding a respectable position felt as unreachable as the stars in the sky. Then came Akello. Born blind, Akello had grown up in a world that consistently underestimated her capabilities. But she had never let her disability define her. Raised with resilience and hardened by hardship, she understood from a young age that she would have to work twice as hard to earn half the recognition. In the District Union of Persons with Disabilities, DUPD, Akello found her purpose. DUP brought together individuals from all disability categories, physical, sensory, mental, visual, and hearing, into a tightly knit coalition. It was more than a support group. It was a force for advocacy. United by shared struggles and collective ambition, they lobbied for equal opportunities. They advised local institutions and pushed for inclusive education and employment. Despite their talents and degrees, many members, including Akello, had been denied jobs. Not for lack of competence, but simply for being different. Akello was among DUP's most vocal and visionary leaders. With a degree in social sciences, she had led campaigns to integrate persons with disabilities into the formal workforce. She advised local governments and companies on disability inclusion, often working behind the scenes to ensure that training programs were accessible. Yet, like the other members of the union, her work remained largely invisible to the wider community, and her job applications were met with rejection after rejection. Inclusion policies touted by major development actors rarely translated into real action. This disconnect was especially stark among the many refugee response agencies operating in the region, some signatories to the localization agenda and funded directly by UN bodies. Despite public commitments, few were willing to formally partner with DUPD or other community-based organizations. Bureaucratic inertia and thinly veiled bias kept doors closed. Then one day a door opened. Akello received a call from a well-known international NGO working on refugee livelihoods. She had applied for the role of project assistant, a support position, but one offering real influence and visibility. It was her chance not only to contribute meaningfully, but to serve as a role model for persons with disabilities across the district. After a thorough interview process, the HR representative called with promising news. Akello had ranked among the top candidates and was being seriously considered. But instead of a formal follow-up or final panel interview, she was unexpectedly invited to a private meeting with the program area manager, Mr. Kaba, the highest-ranking official in the sub-office. The request struck her as unusual, because typically, final stages of recruitment involved structured panels or written feedback, not informal sit-downs behind closed doors. Still, Akello was cautiously optimistic. She knew that in this district, processes often blurred the lines between formal procedure and personal discretion, especially when it came to hiring. She had heard of Mr. Kaba's influence and strategic importance in staffing decisions. Nonetheless, she prepared carefully, arriving early at the sleek gated office compound the next morning. The security guard helped her to the reception, and the receptionist guided her to the manager's office. When Akello entered, she was met with an air of practiced charm. Mr. Kaba rose from behind his desk, his voice smooth and composed as he led her to a chair across from him. The office was sleek, modern furniture, chilled air conditioning. Everything in the room radiated authority, but Akello stayed focused on the opportunity before her. "Akello, it's good to finally meet you," Mr. Kaba said. "You performed exceptionally in the interview. The panel was impressed. I think you're a strong fit for the role." Akello allowed herself a small smile. "Thank you. I'm excited about the possibility." "But," Mr. Kaba said, shifting slightly in his seat, "before we move forward, there's something I want to speak to you about, off the record, you could say." His voice dropped into a quieter, more suggestive tone. "You see, success here isn't just about qualifications or job performance. Trust and loyalty matter, deeply, and in some cases those things are best expressed personally." There was a pause. The air thickened with implication. Akello felt the weight of his words settle in her stomach like a stone, but she kept her expression calm and her voice even. "I see," she said. "It's a lot to take in. I appreciate your honesty and your time." He leaned back, misreading her composure as compliance. "Good. I like people who understand how the system works." Akello gave a polite nod. "Would you mind sharing your direct contact? It might be helpful to have a direct line of communication as I consider everything you've said." "Of course," he replied with a smile, scribbling his number onto a notepad and handing her the slip. "Feel free to call anytime." "Thank you," she said as she stood. "I'll be in touch." Mr. Kaba guided her to the reception, and the receptionist helped her out of the building. Not a trace of emotion betrayed Akello's face, but inside, a storm was brewing. She stepped into the sunlight outside the office compound, the note with Kaba's number tucked neatly into her bag. On the surface, she was composed, but her mind was already turning. She knew exactly what had just happened, and she knew exactly what she had to do. Akello was shaken, but not broken. She understood this wasn't just about her. It was about every woman, with or without disability, who had been cornered by someone in power. This was about systemic abuse that thrived in silence. She contacted Chandaru, her close friend and fellow DUPD leader, and together they devised a plan. Akello would return, on her terms. And indeed, over the next 2 weeks, she scheduled 3 follow-up meetings with Mr. Kaba under the pretense of clarifying her role. During these meetings, Akello used the assistive technology on her smartphone to discreetly record their conversations. In one of the meetings where Kaba invited her to what he called a business dinner, where they could speak freely, away from office distractions, the insinuations were unmistakable. Akello saved WhatsApp messages and transcribed audio recordings using speech-to-text software. Every message, every word, and every gesture was documented. Once the evidence was watertight, she and Chandaru compiled a formal dossier. Akello requested a confidential meeting with the NGO's regional human resources lead. With headphones in her ears, a screen reader narrating, and a braille display at her fingertips, she presented her case, calmly, clearly, and with unwavering courage. The regional HR manager was stunned. There was no room for ambiguity. Mr. Kaba was suspended within days, pending investigation. By the end of the month, he was dismissed for gross misconduct. The ripple effects were immediate and powerful, like a seismic of an earthquake. Staff members who had once whispered about Kaba's behavior now came forward with their own stories. What had been hidden in silence was laid bare. The NGO overhauled its complaint procedures, introduced an ethics hotline, and mandated anti-harassment training for all employees. At the district level, Akello's actions sparked wider change. With support from the Refugee Desk Office and UNHCR, the local government issued new directives. These directives required all NGO partners to integrate training on workplace ethics, inclusion, and disability rights into their programs. Private companies also began reviewing their hiring practices to better accommodate persons with disabilities. Akello was offered the position again, this time directly by the headquarters, but she declined. Instead, she accepted a consultancy with a regional civil society network focused on disability rights and organizational accountability. She wanted to ensure that no other woman, with or without disability, should face what she had faced, alone and unheard. Her story was no longer just about fighting for inclusion. It had become a fight for justice, for dignity, and for truth. Akello had shown that courage, amplified by technology and rooted in community, could dismantle even the most entrenched abuse. She had not only defended her own worth, she had helped redefine the system for others. Word of what Akello had done spread quickly across the district and beyond. Many spoke in awe, not just of her courage, but that a young woman with a disability had done what others feared to do. She had confronted what women without disabilities had silently endured for years, and in doing so, inspired a shift in what many thought was impossible. For women across the region, she became more than a symbol. She became a turning point. A leader, a light, a legacy. If there is a specific issue you would like me to address in a similar manner, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. In the meantime, kindly share the video with your colleagues, networks, and communities. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with future content that informs, inspires, and promotes inclusive development.